about this. You're on your journey too. So we get to come together in this moment and just appreciate the fact that we're both trying our best. And that's inspiring to me.
Right. You know, from delivering a baby, marrying a stranger in Vegas, living on a deserted island. I mean, some wild stuff. But it wasn't until number 26 that really changed. Tell me about that differs from all of the other silly or fun or adrenaline filled, list items that you checked off.
Well, number 26 is help a stranger, is how it reads. And I just hadn't really helped anyone before. People would say, we all have friends who do a marathon or a 10K run and they ask for a donation to a charity. I would just go delete. I just never helped anyone. I was pretty selfish. And so on my list of things that I wanted to try for the first time, I was like, I'll help somebody. It so happened that it was a gentleman called Mark who had seen me do an interview on TV, and he was able-bodied until his early 20s, where he was then bitten by a tick, contracted Lyme's disease, became a quadriplegic without the ability to move or speak. Pretty tragic. And he asked me to shave his head. He said that he'd created a bucket list because he had heard of my story, and he wanted me to shave his head. So I shaved his head, and I got an immense sense of satisfaction just from that, just of, in a small way, being of service to someone. And then I said, what else can I do? And as you know, he said, his carer told me that he had always wanted to do a half marathon. And so I asked how I could help him, and he said, push me. It was the first words I understood from Mark. And so I pushed him in his wheelchair for a half marathon. And it was just the greatest thing I've ever done. And I talk about it from stage all the time because it's true. It was not an act of charity. It wasn't helping somebody. It was two people who had very different lives, but they both identified a goal each. And because they shared it, we found that there was an opportunity to collaborate. So it was like this. You want to, interview a podcast guest, and I think, that'd be interesting. We're collaborating. So Mark and I got to collaborate that day and connect on a level which was profound for me, being of service to someone, and then seeing also that I wasn't the only one pushing Mark. By the end of the race, there were 20 people, strangers, pushing Mark across the finish line. It just really highlighted to me that we're all in this together. We are strong as individuals, but we are better together. We have an innate ability and desire to support, to collaborate, to help others. And I'm realizing that we live in a society where we're not quite sure how to all the time, because in the first place, we're not vulnerable enough to say, hey, I need help with this, or this is really important to me. Who can help me? And so that's the conversation that I really enjoy engaging with now, encouraging people to think about what's important to them and then trying to find others to connect with them. So there's this sense of collective evolution. I really believe that we each have like an individual spark, and the key to something better is being able to change that into a collective sense of contribution.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I'd heard that really deeply under happiness lies joy, and under joy lies satisfaction.
Right.
That if we're really truly satisfied, we're mindful, we're content, gratitude, all these things, but it's where do you turn? There's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of, we want to find that passion, that purpose, the happiness, the joy. And a lot of times we can go about it and almost push away the very thing we're craving. You recently attended the Hoffman Institute.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, the Hoffman process.
The Hoffman process. Tell me about that experience.
It was life-changing for me. I'm 43. I did it at 42 years old. It's a process that was recommended to me by Ben Nempton, good friend of ours, another speaker. I knew a few other people who had done it as well. I saw Ben come out of it, and it was like he was a different person. And we're good friends. And so he said, I think you should do this. And I was curious as to doing something on this personal development, journey we're all on. And so it's essentially a 7-day retreat, no phone. It's a process which is about 50 years in the making. It's been iterated, of course, along the way. And it allows you the opportunity to identify the negative patterns that we've onboarded from the way that our parents brought us up. And once you identify what those patterns are, The process allows you to disconnect from those negative patterns. So you have full agency over how you want to be now without the negative kind of bias, if you will. And that's incredibly freeing. And, you know, a lot of us have shame, negative self-talk. The process allowed me to realize that I had this core belief that I was worthless. And also, not to sound and jump to something that's too profound, but I also didn't love myself. And the process allows you to address that. And so in 7 days, I came out and I was bouncing. I was just bouncing. And it's impacted in an incredibly positive way in my life since, every aspect of my life. It's allowed me to find love, which was something I was looking for. It's allowed me to just feel like I'm being myself. Because I think you're right. I think you can, with the what's, as you mentioned before, the wants, if we want too much, there's a tendency to get away from what's really important, and we over systemize things because we're told everything's formulaic, and if we follow the formula, we'll reach a sense of satisfaction or joy or happiness. And I think what Hoffman allowed me to do was get back into the emotion of it. Mm-hmm. There's just so many things in my life recently which have pointed me in this direction, and I know that I operate best when I'm led by emotion.
Yeah.
And curiosity, rather than strategy and, visioning all these things that I hope will bring me happiness.
Right.
I try and be more in the moment, like Chris was.
For so long, I was seeking external validation. And I thought it was the things that would bring about the happiness. And then when I wasn't happy, I worked harder because then I thought that I didn't have nice enough things. Right. Or the things weren't impressive enough to others to help me feel more validated. When I realized that what was behind that was shame, unworthiness. I used to think I was unlovable. And I would tell myself that. And so when we tell ourselves that we're unlovable and we're broken, that's a narrative, that's a belief. And when you say it enough, you're going to believe it. And so are these the narratives and the beliefs that we're talking about that really, instead of looking at what we need to get as opposed to what we need to shed or change? Was that your experience?
Yeah, it's really well put, for sure. The way that I did it a while ago now, so I might not do this justice, but, from a young age as kids, babies, our parents might not be around because they're working or something, but you feel lonely and you don't have the capacity to understand that your dad's working late or whatever it might be. And so you think, it must be my fault. So you build shame from the core. And then as we get older, we tend to try and offset that with habits that allow us to feel better. They can be negative patterns, could be drinking, it could be self-sabotage, judgment, whatever. We all have, many patterns. And to your point, the Hoffman process for me was a process of shedding rather than gaining. In fact, I went at you get a coach when you go in there, and I said to my coach, I need systems for my life to operate better. And he was like, no, you don't. And he was Corey, he's become a very good friend of mine. He was right. He was right, because we live in a world where this is instant gratification, and again, there's lots of systems, 3 ways to do this, 5 ways to elevate this, the morning routines you must do, it's an ice bath, stare at the sun for 10 minutes, whatever they are. And, there's some benefit to all of that, of course, but to think that is the way to get ahead and find yourself and find purpose I think that's a bit short-sighted. That's what I'm learning. So it was definitely a matter of shedding stuff, accepting myself, self-compassion, forgiveness are 2 really important tenets, I think, for us as humans to have. And so on the last day of the Hoffman process, I remember looking in the mirror, and there had been no physiological change, but I looked in the mirror and I just looked different. And I said, I love you. And I burst out crying because it was the first time I really felt